What is happening, my good people? It is a Wednesday. It is a live stream Wednesday as I get my headphones on because one of the things I forgot, just to make sure that there isn't any interference, there we go. To make sure that there's nothing funky going on with the audio, I got to make sure that it's loud and clear coming at you here where it is another Wednesday, the 14th. That's right. Let's pop it up right here on the graphic. We're approaching the middle of May. We're now less than 2 weeks away from the unofficial beginning of summer. Think about that. We have Memorial Day. This is pretty much going to be here within a matter of minutes. Forget about a matter of days. And the sports world, of course, is a spinning. And thanks to what it is that I love to do, that I'm here to present to you this latest live stream. And boy, there is a lot to unpack. So welcome for my first timers. Obviously, welcome back. But for today, there's so many different directions I'm going to go at. And of course, I thank each and every one of you for tuning in, for watching, for following, subscribing, etc., because it goes a long way in trying to get the word out about these live streams every Wednesday here, high noon on the East Coast. And of course, for those who are watching the replay that aren't on live, shame on you. You should be watching live. I'm just kidding. But for those who are watching, please leave a comment in the chat box there. I'll be going back and forth with the diehards that come in and that will straggle in throughout the course of the next hour, hour 15, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Last week was epic. I was actually on live for over 2 hours, and it was a lot of fun, a lot to get into. And for those who are in the chat room, of course, please share your thoughts. I'll post them up on the screen here, which is always a good thing, just to get an idea for those who do participate. I know I have my usual suspects, my guy Val, my guy Jonathan, my guy James. Those are my mainstays. I also have Nancy that chimes in from time to time. I know I may be forgetting a person or two. Let me just think. For starters, that's where I go. My Bio that's my guy there on the West Coast. I can't forget him. So I am supremely grateful for you guys and gals, as you all know. I pretty much thank you probably 1,000 times over. You're probably saying, J Real, shut up and just talk sports, so we can go back and forth on what it is that you have that's on your mind. And yes, I will definitely do that. And I will start right here. It has been a rough, 36 hours for yours truly. And here's the graphic. And we'll talk about the second part in a second. Can the Celtics rebound after Jayson Tatum injury? Ugh. Just reading that sends shivers down the spine. But the NBA second round, same for the NHL in that regard, because it is becoming a big, giant thud. Now, the games have been somewhat competitive, and I'll break them all down, more so in the NHL than the NBA, because think about it. When you have a series that's already complete with the Indiana Pacers and Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm going to get to that. For the Cavalier fan, you may want to cover your eyes and also at the same time cover your ears, because I got a lot to discuss when it comes to the Cavaliers. And I talked about this for weeks, and I'm sure those who have been in the live stream and in the chat rooms over the last X amount of weeks, I've been ferociously talking about how important it was for the Cavaliers to get to, forget about conference final, an NBA final, and they fell way short of that. As well as the Minnesota Golden State series, that has not been competitive. Obviously, no Steph Curry, so that is a big, giant void for the Warriors and them trying to save their season tonight, which the Celtics will also do. And I understand the only series that's been competitive has been OKC and Denver, which, of course, I will touch on. But I have to start here as the big Celtic fan that I am, living in New York City with nothing but blue and orange surrounding me. And no, not blue and orange for the Mets or blue and orange for the New York Islanders, who have the number one pick overall. And, oh, by the way, the Islanders were a long shot to get that number one pick, which is also a theme later on that I'm going to discuss when it comes to the NBA. But watching the game Monday night and seeing the Celtics, who had another double-digit lead, no, it wasn't in the 20-point variety, despite the fact that they've had 3 20-point leads in this series where they only were victorious in one of those games, and that was game 3. And I know this is going to sound like a guy that is the old man, get off my lawn, and the guy that has sour grapes and I understand Tatum injury aside, and we're going to get to that, of course. But the Knicks have played, let's face it, out of these 4 games, one very good game, if not excellent game, and that was what we saw there on Monday night. And that's not to say they didn't deserve to win games 1 and 2, because the Celtics obviously rolled out the red carpet with a bunch of rose petals and 2 bottles of Dom Perignon to say, here, take the game. Because of their ineptitude behind the three-point line and for them not making a big shot when it mattered, and especially at the end of game 2, the play that was designed for Tatum pretty much to attack the basket, but then was thwarted by OG Anunoby going left. And then there was a trio of Knick players there to meet Tatum as he tried to pass the ball, and it was intercepted by Mikal Bridges, and the Knicks steal 2 games in Boston, and that's what they did, because no matter how you slice it, and again, this may sound bitter, this may sound sour grapes, etc., the Celtics have just thrown this series away and flushed it down the toilet to give it to the Knicks. All right? That's right. I said it. And let all the comments come, whether you're watching live or not. Please, you can litter my timeline. You can litter the chat room as much as you want. And I'll go back and forth. And I'm not going to say and go as far as saying, oh, the better team, blah, 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 because, right, it doesn't matter. We've seen so many instances throughout the course of any sport, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, hockey, etc., that the best team doesn't always win. But the better team has actually thrown this series away. And it's just flat out embarrassing because of their head coach and because of their analytics, etc. Now, with that being said, I want to talk about Monday night in particular. The Knicks deserved to win that game. They were down by 12 and a half, actually 11. It was 62-51. And at one point, they were down by 14 in the third quarter. And they came storming back. And Jayson Tatum, who wasn't going to go out like that, who had a remarkable game, 42 points, you know the stats. Derek White, who had a killer first half and certainly cooled off in the second half, nowhere to be found. And for the Jaylen Browns of the world, and even more so, and I'm going to get on this case, especially when we're going to talk about tonight's game, is Kristaps Porzingis. But they were a no-show in the second half, where Jalen Brunson had the big-time third quarter. What do you have, 18 points in the third? I see a couple of comments there. Don't worry, I'll get to them. And for Jalen Brunson to have the big third quarter, as well as Mikal Bridges with the fourth quarter that he had, the contributions that you got from OG Anunoby making big-time three-pointers, Karl-Anthony Towns with also big buckets there in the fourth quarter, and it went going away. And it was marred at the time at 111-104 with about 2:58 to go in the game, where Jaylen Brown, and I don't know what the hell he was doing there at the top of the key, where Tatum was about 12 feet to the other side of the court. And it looked like he tried to get the ball to Tatum. It was deflected, stolen by OG Anunoby. And as Tatum tried to lunge and make an effort to get the ball in the process, and I knew it the second I watched it, that Tatum on the floor, writhing in pain, even called a timeout to know that he was done for the game, done for the series, and in essence, done until quite possibly the 2026-2027 year. I mean, I don't know what else to say. And that was one where, interestingly enough, when you watched it live and you see him lunge for the ball and he does fall to the court, and Anunoby goes for the dunk, 113-104, the game was over at that point. And for Tatum to be rolling on the floor and you didn't get a replay, you didn't get anything, and went to a commercial break, you're thinking to yourself, what the hell happened? Did he tweak his knee? Did he turn his ankle? What's going on? So now we're in suspense as basketball fans, and especially as Celtic fans. And when they came back from the commercial and you see him get picked up off the floor, and now he's literally on one leg. And I thought to myself, right at that point, without even watching a replay, it's his Achilles. It could have been his ACL, because we've seen those non-contact injuries when it comes to the ACL, whether it be in basketball. Just think of Derrick Rose once upon a time. And obviously in the NFL, we've seen God knows how many, more than we could count, when it comes to having those non-contact injuries there with ACLs. But for whatever the reason, I thought, oh, no, it's Achilles. Because even with an ACL, you will see a player walk off under his own power. Very gingerly, I might add, but still, they would be able to get up and walk off. And because he was carried off of the floor, well, I would say carried because he was on one leg. It wasn't as if he had both of his legs. They were carrying him off that way. But watching that, and even I posted on the YouTube channel as a short, and I know you cannot put the cart before the horse. You can't come out and say, oh, it's an Achilles injury. It's automatic, so on and so forth, because you get in trouble, not necessarily personally, but obviously as far as credibility is concerned. And I did temper it by saying, listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's the prognosis. We can't tell. But based on the replay and what we saw there and the experience of watching these type of injuries, whether it was Damian Lillard early on in this postseason, whether it was Kevin Durant that time in the NBA Finals when he came back from that calf injury. And, of course, at that point, he blew out his Achilles even at that juncture. And we could go through a multitude of these players. And for Tatum to now be put on the shelf for, like I mentioned, an entire year, we cannot even think that he'll be gracing a court at the end of the regular season next year or even in the postseason subsequently. I can't see that happening. So to me, if I'm the Celtics and I'm the front office, and I get it, unless the doctors sign off with flying colors, because remember, he is going into the first year of a $314 million deal. And there is no way, even at the age of 27, he'll be 28 next year, there is no way that you could have this guy come back prematurely or early or whatever, unless, again, however the science, technology, etc., this guy comes back miraculously, a la Steve Austin. And I'm aging myself here. For those who don't know, Steve Austin, 70s, the $6 million man, played by Lee Majors. Unless it's that, there's no way. That investment is way too high. You cannot have him come back even a second sooner, let alone a day, week, month, etc. And with that investment, you have to make sure that all I's are dotted and T's are crossed in order for him to be cleared to play in an NBA game. So when we look at the big picture here, I mean, the Celtics, what do you do? Now, I understand it's long-term, and I don't want to get too much into the long-term. I want to talk about the here and now, but the Celtic team as it is, with all the contracts that they have, and there's going to be guys that they're probably going to have to trade, and I don't know if they're going to have to bring in someone that's, I don't want to say a stopgap, but this can't be all Jaylen Brown, and who knows about Porzingis, et cetera. I understand he may have one more year, but he's an expiring contract next year. There's a lot to really unpack when it comes to the future of this team, and I get it. They're not done yet, and I'll talk about tonight's game in a second. They're not done as far as this series goes. Now, are they going to come out of it alive? I don't think so. But it is a scenario where you have to start thinking about the future, at least for next year with this team. Because of their window, because of their contracts and everything that's been tied into this organization to win now. No, this isn't a team that's on the come up. This isn't the Spurs that have Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, and a number 2 pick overall this year where, yes, they may trade for a Giannis Antetokounmpo, or maybe even a Kevin Durant, for that matter, just to see if they could get that window open for a championship sooner than later. But for the Celtics, it's all about right to second. Now, we know this year is going to be shot. There's no way that even miraculously, if they come back and win this series, and I wouldn't be surprised if the basketball gods would be cruel to the Knicks fan at this point, considering 3-1, Tatum out. We have the home court. Even if we lose tonight, we still have Game 6 at the Garden on Friday, which happens to be the same night of the opener of 3 at Yankee Stadium for the Subway Series, which I get a lot of people outside of New York won't care about because it's going to be all about the Knicks. But you have Juan Soto going back to Yankee Stadium, which obviously I'll touch on later on. But this is a situation where you're really going to have to think long and hard. If you're Brad Stevens, the GM and VP of basketball ops for the Celtics, and then the ownership, which is going to be a new ownership, which has already been intact right now. So you know that they're going to make some financial decisions here, whether or not as far as procuring players, and I'm sure they may get a tax exempt for next year, considering that although Tatum on the books, but I'm sure they'll get some sort of exception level when it comes to bringing a veteran, even if it is for 1 year. So that I'm sure will have to be something that the Celtic brass will take that bridge when it's time to cross it. But it's just a not huge blow. It's an enormous blow to the team, to their organization, and obviously to the NBA overall. And no matter how much you may hate the Celtics, no matter how much you may look at them and say, oh, well, who cares? They won their championship last year. It's time for another team to win. And that's fine. But that is a significant blow for one of your top 5, 7, 8, 10 players in the league, without question. All right, now let's get to the game tonight. Do the Celtics win, or I should say maybe do the Knicks close out the Celtics tonight? Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of emotion in that building. Can the Knicks go out the way the Cavaliers did and not win a home game in the conference semis, considering that the Pacers won all 3 games, 1, 2, and 5 in Cleveland? It's quite possible. And I love the take by Jalen Brunson saying that we haven't won anything yet, and they're absolutely right. But I would think that whether it be Celtic pride or just team pride, championship pride, that they're not going to go out like that, especially on their home court. I think they're going to put up a big effort. I could see the game being close in the fourth quarter. Hopefully the Celtics will have enough of a cushion where they won't have to be in a tooth and nail type game to where they're going to try to play hero ball at the end where they're down 101-98 or 101-99, let's just say, and they're going to try to win it with a 3 as opposed to just try to get the high percentage shot to tie the game and then go ahead and possibly either go into overtime or have another opportunity to win in regulation. Who knows? Obviously, we don't know how the game's going to play out. But I think for knowing that they're fallen soldier, they're going to want to play for him. They're going to want to play for their city and know that they cannot go out like this. I think they'll win tonight. Now, after tonight, I could see them losing Friday. There is a part of me I could see them winning also. But the only way I see the Knicks winning past tonight, and even though his contribution tonight will be enormous, whatever it is that he puts forth, and I'm going to tell you who it is in a second. But if the Celtics are going to have any visions of getting back to their 4th straight Eastern Conference final, and yes, I'm putting it squarely on this guy. No, it's not Jaylen Brown. No, it's not Derek White. No, it's not Drew Holiday. Certainly not Al Horford or Peyton Pritchard. This is going to fall squarely on the shoulders of Kristaps Porzingis. If they have any shot to win tonight, even if he puts up the lousy 7 or 8 points that he has in these last couple of games, Jaylen Brown could probably carry them to the finish line. And with Derek White, if he's hot, shooting threes, and Peyton Pritchard, who had a big-time game 3, led the team in points when he had 23 points in the game, if he has an outburst, and again, just based on pride on their home floor, quite frankly, I think they'll win the game. Can they lose it? Absolutely. But moving forward, if Porzingis, and here's a guy that, think about this, in a Celtic uniform, he has had one moment. It was a big one, game 1, after being out from the first round series to Miami, as he played a couple of games, and they didn't come back till game 1 against the Mavericks in the finals. And that was a very impactful game 1 and pretty much set the tone for those first 2 games in their building. But other than that, he's done nothing. Nobody remembers what he's done in the regular season. Obviously, he didn't come back until December based on the leg injury that he had suffered in game 5 when they closed out the Mavs and won the championship. And if Kristaps Porzingis has anything in his chest and between his ears, and I talked about this, check those receipts if you watch or listen to the podcast, dating back to when they brought in Porzingis via trade by Washington. I want to see him put up a big-time performance tonight. And no, he doesn't have to score 30 and 14 rebounds. No, can you put up 22 and 9? Can you go ahead and do that? And then if they do win tonight, can you go to the Garden against the team that drafted you? I understand it was many moons ago. But how about putting up an effort similar to what you did in the final regular season game in the season series against the Knicks, when I believe he put up 31 points in the game off the top of my head? How about that Kristaps Porzingis show up? Not the guy that's going to, and he's going to get a bunch of minutes tonight. And unless his leg snaps on the TD Garden floor, so what? You got to go out there and give maximum effort. That's why you're getting paid the big bucks. That's why you were brought to Boston to be that guy almost as an X factor. Because of his size, because of his playmaking ability, or really his shooting and his defense and rebounding. He's not a big-time passer, but it's one of those things where the time has come for you, Kristaps. You want to earn your chops and be a part of Celtic lore. I get it, game one, but it wasn't squarely on him as far as a major contribution to them winning the title. But you want to be revered as a guy that is only going to be here probably next year as well. And he is an expiring contract, and they're going to need him because Tatum's going to be out. But now is the time to raise the level of your game. And nobody questions his talent or his ability. But again, what's here and what's here? That's what I question. And I always have and always will. So I think that the Celtics will win tonight, and then eventually they're going to lose this in this series, I think. And it probably is going to be Friday night. Could it go back to a game 7? To me, that's going to be based on Porzingis and Brown, too. Brown's going to have to put up finals MVP and conference finals MVP type of numbers and effort. I mean, that's all there is to it. And for the Knicks, we know what they're capable of. We know what is in store and what's at stake for them to get to a conference final. Well, the last time the Knicks made it to a conference final, think about this. You got to go back to the year 2000 when they lost to the Pacers in 6 games. Since then, they haven't come anywhere close. And we understand 2013 with Carmelo, they made it to the conference semis against who else? The Indiana Pacers. So here it is. It's all right in front of the Knicks. They got 3 shots to get 1 game. Obviously, I think they will. And even though, of course, I started off this live stream being bitter because of the Celtics and them blowing those first 2 games and not giving these Knicks the full credit. But, hey, I watch the games. I'm a fan. I'm a little bit saucy, bitter, etc. But at the same time, I'm factual. Let's get to some comments before I get to my next topic, and that's let's see, what do we got here? Dead Yell New. Hey Jay, hope your Celtics win tonight. All right, Dead Yell. All right, that's a first time we've seen Shake It Off. The Celtics need to come together and rally. Yeah, they do. I mean, they're a champion or a reigning champ, and until they get knocked out, they are still the champs. But let's just see what's going to happen there, as I just detailed tonight. And then my guy Biosile, greetings. What is going on? And going back to Dead Yell I can't even read here. What's going on? Dead Yell New Yes. Pete Rose is stated by MLB. I'm going to get to that, and I'll go back to that comment there later on. And Warriors, will they win today? Val B, my guy. Giants won yesterday in baseball. Yes, I know they've hit the skids here a little bit as of late. Warriors, I'm going to get to the Warriors. I'll get to those comments afterwards with that and the baseball. Pete Rose, of course, I'm going to unpack that a little bit later on. So definitely stay tuned for that. But the next thing I got to get to, and I understand it may be easy to pound the Cavaliers today. And we could talk about the injuries. Oh, well, they didn't have Evan Mobley. Darius Garland didn't play in the first 6 games of the postseason. Forget about the Heat series. Didn't play in games 1 and 2. Mobley was out because of an ankle. DeAndre Hunter with a wrist. They should have won game 2. I'm sorry. You're up 7 points with 48 seconds to go. You got to win the game. And you're a 1 seed. And yes, there was no Mobley, no Garland, and no DeAndre Hunter. But they still should have won that game. And as it was, they came back in game 3 with Garland, Hunter, and Mobley. And what happened? They blew the doors off of the Pacers. And then what happened in game 4? Role reversal. The Pacers said, all right, you ran us out of the gym in game 3. Well, now we got to return the favor. They were up by 41 at halftime with those guys that were out in game 2. And then last night, get off to a lead, playing well. And in the second half, the Pacers said, all right, stop fooling around. It's time to play some ball. And they ran past them standing still. And I know I can't pound Donovan Mitchell. He put up big-time numbers throughout the series. He had to leave game 5 or game 4 with the ankle injury, and who knows what his status was going to be. And he put up big-time effort. Now, he's a volume shooter. You know he's going to chuck up a bunch of shots, but he went out in a blaze of glory. The rest of the team, a bunch of frauds. And I guess I got to call Donovan. I'm not going to call him a fraud. I'm going to call the team a fraud. Because you do not become a 1 seed as they did this past year. And yes, people can say, well, Jay Reels, aren't the Oklahoma City Thunder a fraud last year, considering they were 1 seed and they lost in the second round to the Dallas Mavericks? I give them a little bit of a break only because they were a young team. In fact, they're still the youngest team in the NBA, and here they are now in the second round, 1 game away from a conference final. So I gave them a pass. This year, no passes for OKC. They have to get to a final. And you can even argue they should win it. So no passes for them this year. Last year, a bit of a pass. But the Cavaliers, they're a veteran-laden team, led by the coach of the year, Kenny Atkinson, led by the defensive player of the year in one Evan Mobley, that had the best record in the conference, 64 games, and now they are getting ready to book vacation plans to Cancun. I'm sorry, no passes for me. And I get it that the Pacers are a very good team. And if you remember, what was it? 2 weeks ago, whether it was here or more so on the podcast, but I remember sitting here live and thinking about it. I thought the Pacers were a live dog, and I picked them to win in 7. Check those receipts. So this wasn't a thing where I was on the Cavalier bandwagon, and I said, oh, yeah, it's going to be Cavs and Celtics, and look at that. Everybody thought from the start of the playoffs and pretty much maybe from February when Cleveland went to Boston after losing 2 out of 3 to the Celtics in the regular season, and they were down 25-3 in the first quarter, came back and won the game because they shut the Celtics out. Not out. They shut them down in the second half. I believe they outscored them 72-40 in the second half, and they won the game, and everybody was thinking, Clash of the Titans in the Eastern Conference, Cavs, Celtics. Well, how's that looking right about now? As the Celtics are 48 minutes from being extinct, and you're going to have Pacers-Knicks, a rematch of the conference semis last year. So, but I got to get on them because they did an atrocious job in Game 2. They did an even more atrocious job in Game 4. They didn't even show up. And I don't know if that Benedict Mathurin, DeAndre Hunter fracas, where Mathurin got ejected there in the first quarter, and the score was 22-10. So, all right, it was starting to get out of hand, but it got worse from that point on. Did the whole team check out after that? So that's on the head coach. And I get it. Kenny Atkinson is not going to be confused with Phil Jackson or Red Auerbach or the dearly and newly mentally retired Greg Popovich. But, geez, I'm sure you have the pulse of your team. Did he not say, guys, let's get it together here. We're down by 12. We just had this little scrum. It's time to regroup. It's time to get our focus back. Now, I understand Donovan Mitchell was out of the second half of that game, but they're already down by 41. So I don't want to hear it. They get no breaks in my eyes. Sorry. So the Cavaliers, that's it. Kaput. Done. And the Pacers, I didn't put up a graphic for them, but the Pacers, watch this be the year. And I picked Boston OKC at the start. And I'm sure a lot of people were hoping for that, or maybe even Cleveland OKC, the 2-1 seeds, whatever. Watch them get the NBA. And I'm sure for the average or casual sports fan, they may look at that and be like, all right, it's something different. It's no Boston. It's no LA. It's no Golden State. You know, the teams that we've seen over the years that for countless times that people are sick of. Indiana, Minnesota. All right, great. Well, if that's going to be the case, that is going to be probably the Arizona, Texas of NBA Finals that you saw in the World Series 2 years ago, because I don't know how many people are going to gravitate to that series. And I'll tell you this right now, Adam Silver, you don't even need to put True Serum. I'm sure if you pulled him aside privately and be like, Adam, who are you fooling? You know you want the Knicks in the finals, right? And I'm sure he would have to say, yeah, anything short of that, Indiana does not bring a lot of sexiness, no sex appeal, there's no juice. And it's not a knock on their team, it's not a knock on their organization, etc. but they do not. Although I think they could represent in the NBA Finals this year. I'm sure they would sign for Indiana OKC. And not to say OKC is a hotbed for basketball. Well, maybe locally, but it's not Boston, New York, Philly, LA, Golden State. You can go to all these big-time major cities, Dallas for that matter, because of their market. So NBA right now, like I said at the very top, the second round is becoming a giant thud. And even though your Final Four would be very fascinating with Minnesota OKC, with the two stars going at it with Anthony Edwards and SGA, and then Indiana, New York, need I say more? Their rivalry dating back to the 90s, and then obviously playing last year in the conference semifinal. That's going to be a hellacious series. But if New York isn't there, and I'm sure a lot of people, and I'm going way ahead of myself, but just looking into the crystal ball before I move on, the Pacers are a team that is going to be a tough out. And you could talk about, all the injuries and they faced a depleted Milwaukee Bucks team, and the Cavaliers were a bunch of frauds. All right, well, they, in all likelihood, are going to face the Knicks, and they're going to be healthy, at least you would think, going into the series, where obviously last year they didn't have OG Anunoby, Julius Randle was hurt, Jalen Brunson hurt himself in Game 7. So I think that's going to be a fascinating series. Obviously, we'll talk about it more as we get closer. You have to listen to the podcast, and who knows, after tonight, you may have your Indiana, New York conference final. So podcast tomorrow. Do not forget Apple, Spotify, jreels.com. I'm sure you see it there on the crawl, scrolling at the bottom. So you definitely want to peep that, especially if the Knicks do win tonight. Let me see. I see a comment there. My Dead Yell, yes. No, hey, listen. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. There is no way, shape, or form that they get a pass. And I'm not trying to make Max Strus out to be the microwave Vinnie Johnson, showing my age, look him up, as a guy coming off the bench that's going to light up the score sheet. But Strus does have ability. And yes, he has been capable of having big-time games, especially from three. All you got to do is go back to those games against the Celtics in the conference finals where the guy was lighting it up like a Christmas tree. And then Garland, listen, he is not the most efficient scorer. We get that, and he's a point guard. But, yeah, you got to do better than 4 for 18. Sorry. If you're one of the key focal points of your team, you cannot show up in a Game 5 and just wet the bed. So, Dead Yell, I'm totally in full agreement with you. So that's what you have with Dead Yell. And let's see, we get some more comments here. I'll go back to the other comments that people posted with Pete Rose and the Warriors. And I think I may get to the Warriors next for my guy, Val B. Well, before I get to that, I got to talk about the game last night. And that's OKC on the brink of first conference finals since 2016. And I'm sure the people in OKC and the 20 Oklahoma City Thunder fans outside of that area remember very well. 3-1. Big Clay, Game 6. Losing in Game 7, as we know. And that was when they had Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, etc. Still water, people, not vodka. Now, here's what I'll say about this series. It's been competitive. Obviously, you're going to have a 6th game. Will it go 7? To me, that's what it's all about. I think it will. I think Denver will find a way, although I will not be surprised if OKC winning that Game 4 was enormous the other day, because remember last year, we talked about them just a few minutes ago. They were down 2-1 to Dallas, and they lost a Game 4 to the Mavericks, a game that they had to win because even though they came back home and won Game 5, but they lost at 6. And that was one that I'm sure they remembered in the back of their memory banks. And considering quick turnaround from Friday night where they played, that was was that a 10 o'clock start? That was a 9:30 or 9:45, whenever it was. So therefore, once that game ended, sometime after 11 p.m., no, that'd be 2 hours. That's Mountain. So, yes, we're talking 2 hours. But they had a quick turnaround. They had to play 1:30 on Sunday, and the Nuggets, who did not shoot well, Nikola Jokic did not shoot well from the floor in not only just Games 3, but also Game 4. And for the Thunder to come out alive in that game, that was huge because, as you saw there last night, they win game number 5, and now they can close out the series there in Denver tomorrow night. And how I look at it is that the Thunder, if they mean any business, they would close out the Nuggets. Although I think the Nuggets, they have enough fight. Now, they are thin, as we know. Jokic, he is on literally, all you got to do is just bring an oxygen mask because he's running on fumes. And that's no fault of his. That's just the lack of depth that they had, considering that guys like Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who won a championship with the team 2 years ago, they're no longer there. So, therefore, you have 6.5 guys that you're bringing in and out, where Jokic has to carry the load. And last night, 44 and 15, a monster game for him. But it was short, considering that they did have a lead. And for OKC to come storming back to win the game, that was huge for them. And even if they lose game 6, of course, they have to win game 7, the Thunder. But to me, it will be a statement, not only to the fan, but I think to the league, if they win that game in Denver tomorrow night, because it shows that there has been some growth, that they're just not resting their laurels. Not to say they're just going to lay down and give the game to Denver, but let's just say if they're trailing going into the fourth quarter, they come out and win, you know they mean business. They're not going to say, all right, we got a game 7 in our building, let's just kick back, or you know what, hey, let's just save our energy for game 7, which I believe is not going to be played till Sunday. So it's not Thursday, Saturday. I believe they're going to give them the extra day, which would bode well more for Denver than it would be for OKC, based on what I mentioned as far as that depth and having the extra day's rest. But for the Thunder, I think if they win tomorrow night, that will show the rest of the NBA that not only do they mean business, but they are going to be probably the team to beat overall in the league. And even if Minnesota wins tonight, which they could certainly do at home, which I'll segue to that next, against the Warriors. I'm sorry, Val B. I don't think the Warriors are going to come out alive here tonight. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, they still have Draymond. They still have toughness. They have Steve Kerr. Jonathan Kuminga is your guy, who I understand has pretty much been the fill-in for Steph Curry. And give it up. He's put up some big-time numbers here over the course of these last couple of games. But where's Buddy Hield gone? And also, I don't want to hear, I talked about this on the podcast. I've talked about this on my shorts. And I'm going to say this loud and clear one last time. You don't expect Buddy Hield to have those performances that he had in Game 7 against Houston and in Game 1 of this series when they beat the T-Wolves. Since then, he scored 15, 14, and 13 points individually in those 3 games. That's not going to cut it, especially when Julius Randle is having the series of his life and Ant-Man's doing Ant-Man things. But let's face it, playoff Jimmy, I don't want to hear it anymore. I do not. To me, that is not only an insult, but trying to put that to rest. And I don't want to hear playoff Jimmy. Well, in Game 3, he scored 33 points. In the last 8 minutes of the game, he didn't score anything. And in Game 4, he shot, 9 attempts? No Curry? Is he just deferring to Jonathan Kuminga? Is that the game plan now? That Kuminga, who he had to dust him off with mothballs in the Houston series. And now that Curry is out and he's not going to play tonight in Game 5, who knows? He may even be doubtful for Game 6 if they do live to see another day. But Jimmy Butler, come on. This moniker of him being the guy that arrives and play. And listen, everybody has their playoff moments. And you can say that for anyone in the grand scheme of things. So it's not just playoff Jimmy. We can say the same for playoff Giannis or playoff Jason, as in Jayson Tatum, or playoff Ant-Man or playoff Steph. I mean, to me, that is just the most overused statement. We've heard that in the past about Paul George, playoff Paul. I like to call him way off Paul because he's usually way off, especially in big spots, and he is playoff Paul. But that's it. RIP to the name playoff Jimmy. I don't care if he scores 50 tonight, because in the next game he's probably going to score 13. Let's call it as we see it. So I don't think the Warriors will come out alive. I think the T-Wolves will win tonight. Can the Warriors win? I think they can, but I don't think they will. This is going to be a gentleman's sweep there, considering that the T-Wolves won Game 1 and then the Warriors won Game 1 and the T-Wolves will pretty much take over control from there. And that's it. You're going to have the one series that's guaranteed a 6 game. Knicks Celtics could be over tonight. Warriors, T-Wolves could be over tonight. Indiana, Cleveland's already over. And sadly, it's going to end in a thud, where the first round was thrilling, exciting, etc., where you had 2 Game 7s, you had brutal series, you had surprisingly a very good first round. The second round is just right now going out in a whimper. One other basketball thing I need to get to before I turn my attention, and this one, I'll speak for myself. I kind of should have seen it coming. If you listen to the podcast on Monday, I was talking about the NBA draft lottery and how there were 3 teams that I was looking at to see whether or not that they were going to maybe somehow, some way have the ping pong balls fall their way. The first team being the Sixers, because of how pathetic they were and how, I get it, injuries, etc. But I thought to myself, watch them get the ping pong balls going their way, considering that Joel Embiid, former MVP, but now you would think literally on his last legs, considering all these injuries, and I'm sure he's going to come back with 20 pounds underweight and he's going to look like a specimen, but we all know he has a lot of miles on that body. And frankly, maybe not as many as other big men or other players that have played during the time that he is, from the time he was drafted, because remember, he didn't really play the first couple of years because he had that broken foot coming out of college and has been just decimated by injuries throughout the course of his career, to the point where when he's been on the court, he's been dominant. But I thought to myself, watch Philly be a lucky son of a gun to win the lottery. And then, of course, I had to harken back to 97 with San Antonio and thinking that watch them get Cooper Flag, knowing that they already got Victor Wembanyama and they already have the Aaron Fox on their team that they got via trade by Sacramento. They already had the Rookie of the Year this year, and one Stephon Castle. And watch them get Cooper Flag. And then they'll be the next dynasty in the NBA, considering that they would have 4 guys. Now, granted, they have 3 good ones and, of course, quite possibly a generational player in Wembanyama. But imagine now bringing Cooper Flag in the mix. And then the last team I had were the Brooklyn Nets. And only because here's a team that have tried to do it on 2 separate occasions by putting up, whether it be a super team, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Joe Johnson, Darren Williams. Remember that? Because they were still on the team when they acquired those guys. And we know how that shook down. 1 playoff series win against the Brooklyn Nets, and that was it. That's all they got to show for it. Then after 2019, the KD Kyrie signing in Brooklyn, to where they were a toenail away from getting to a conference final and maybe, just maybe, winning an NBA final. That was the year the Bucks went to the finals and beat the Phoenix Suns. But we all know another first-round win for them, and that was it. Similar to the previous era with KG, Paul Pierce, etc. 1 playoff series win, and that was it. And that was against the Celtics, I might add. And then here we are. The Brooklyn Nets, chances, not too bad. They had one of the worst records in the sport, but it was the Mavericks. Should have known, based on everything that has transpired since February 1st. And if there is one person that has thanked his lucky stars and talk about getting a get out of jail free card to the utmost, is the Maverick GM, Nico Harrison. Because I'm sure you saw the reaction in their war room when Rolando Blackman, the one-time Dallas Maverick, dating back to the 80s, good shooter, etc., and for him to be on that podium and knowing that everybody in Dallas were, you talk about popping the Dom Perignon or drinking the Sauvignon Blanc, and I'm sure that the deviled eggs with the carved, whatever you want to, I don't know, filet mignon with the potatoes au gratin and a slice of blueberry pie, that sucker went down smooth in Dallas that night. Because Nico Harrison has a second life. Because as vilified as he was from February 1st up until Monday night. And there's no way to argue whether or not he deserved that criticism, because I get it. Part of it is on the owner, Patrick Dumont, because there's no way that Harrison makes this deal without getting a sign-off from the owner. But now, and listen, if you're the Mavericks, there is no way you trade this pick. As there's been some rumblings, more so maybe with San Antonio now, but rumblings about maybe you could package this pick for Giannis. You got a reprieve. You got a complete mulligan. You get Cooper Flag, put him there with Anthony Davis. Now, Kyrie's not going to come back probably till March. And who knows what his status is going to be, but obviously you will have Kyrie eventually. And you have the young bigs, Daniel Gafford, the Derek Lively's, PJ Washington. I mean, you have a team that Klay Thompson, understanding the twilight of his career, but you have a team that is certainly going to be good. And a team that you thought would compete for championships, bringing in Anthony Davis because defense, culture, etc., where Luka obviously can't defend the light pole. But now you got your guy. And I tell you, I said it on my short here on YouTube. The conspiracy theorists are coming out. Oh, the fix was in, it was rigged, so on and so forth. Listen, you could think that. Obviously, we're never going to know. But we should have known. We should have known that out of the teams that were in the lottery. And granted, this was a team that made it into the play-in. So I'm sure they're going to be probably, I don't want to say a rule, but I would not be surprised if teams that crack the top 10 in each conference, that includes the play-in teams, that they do not deserve a lottery pick. Watch that be the next thing. Now, we'd have to see a little bit more as time moves along. But Dallas had what? A 1.8 chance of winning. And look at this. Similar to the Islanders, as I talked about earlier. They were supposed to be 10th when you break down the pecking order, and they got the number one pick. Now, granted, there's no Cooper Flag coming out of junior or coming out in the NHL. There's no Macklin Celebrini or Alexis Lafreniere of 5 years ago that, although now starting to play better over the last couple of years, but this was a guy that coming out of junior was supposed to be that next guy. Or there's no Connor Bedard coming out. Now I'm getting to hockey here, but you get my drift. But if you're the Mavericks, you are thanking to the high heavens that you got the number one pick. And you know what? I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the fan base, not necessarily the organization. I could care less. But because of the bitterness, the disdain, the disgust, whatever adjective you want to throw in there, that the Maverick fan had to endure here over the last 3.5 months, you've been rewarded. And you know what? For them, I'm happy. Dead Yell says, draft is fixed. If Arthur Anderson can fix the Enron books, the draft could be fixed too. And where did Enron originate? Weren't they originally in Houston? Well, I know Enron Field was in Houston. I can't just say that they were from Houston, but listen, we could think about that all we want, Dead Yell, and we don't know unless we're in the room and we count the ping pong balls, etc. I mean, it is suspicious. And I thought that the minute I was watching this live, and I probably should have recorded myself live. That would have been interesting. And when you see teams like Utah and the Wizards, I mean, those organizations have to be sick because they, for whatever it is, they cannot win for trying. And I feel for them. I really do. But when you start to hear during the broadcast that, that means Philly's in the top 4. That means San Antonio's in the top 4. And I just thought to myself, or that means Dallas in the top 4. I said to myself, at first I thought San Antonio was going to get the pick. I really did. I was thinking back to the early 2010s when the Cavaliers had Kyrie, Anthony Bennett, and Andrew Wiggins. They got the number one pick in 3 of 4 years. And it made you think, what? That's where you could say maybe a fix is in to get the number one pick 3 out of 4 years when LeBron left Cleveland and all of a sudden they're getting the number one picks as if it's Halloween candy. Where, hey, oh, wow, number one pick again? Whoo, wow, I'm shocked. But, and I'll get you a comment in a second there, Dead Yell. But I will say that even in that scenario, for them to get those picks, I thought that it was going to be San Antonio again because Wembanyama, then you have Flag, then you have everything I talked about with De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle. I said now they're going to be the Spur Dynasty reincarnate or Spur Dynasty 2.0. And it's not to say they can't be that now because they still have the number 2 pick overall, and who knows whether they're going to trade the pick or not. That's for later on down the road. But I said to myself, no, I can't have 1997 flashbacks again. Because as a Celtic fan, I was scarred because I was hoping the Celtics got Tim Duncan. And yes, I know, get over it. It's almost 30 years. I get it. But at the same time, I thought they were going to get the number 1 pick. So watching this live, let me take you through this in a quick 90-second overview. As they were unfolding the envelopes, I said, watch Charlotte get the 4 pick. And when I saw Charlotte, I said, oh, my God. I thought the next pick after that was going to be Dallas. And then I would have known. And then at that point, it was either going to be San Antonio or Philadelphia. When Philadelphia got the 3rd pick, I said, all right, well, maybe this is San Antonio. And at that point, I said, oh, my God, Dallas is going to get the number 1 pick. And that's when it struck me. I was like, wait a minute. All the terrible Luka energy is going to go out the room. And sure enough, when San Antonio was the 2nd pick, I said, I can't believe it. But again, I was happy for the fan base. I mean, what more can I tell you? And now they might as well just say, forget about it. And I think they may have even come out and said the hierarchy of the Mavs that they're going to take Cooper Flag. And why not? You have the number 1 pick. It's not as I understand you're not on the clock. It's not officially draft day, but just say it. Cooper Flag, we're not trading the pick. I don't care if you give us 1 million draft picks. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're going to bring back Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Jerry West. There could be a Michael Jordan reincarnate. We're not trading the pick. Now, of course, it's a stretch, but you know what I'm saying. So that's what we got the basketball. I know it took over almost an hour, but obviously there's a lot to discuss there with the injury and the Knicks, et cetera. All right, Ted, what do you got for me? Mavs were told, trade your best player to the Lakers, you win the draft. Yeah. And you know what? Who knows? Because, Adam Silver had to put the stamp of approval on this trade. And that is a 30 for 30 altogether because it's not as if Luka was on the block. It's not as if Luka was being dangled. Because if that was the case, 28 other GMs would have picked up the phone and said, wait, what can we get for Luka? This was a clandestine, under the radar, maybe even under the table if you want to even go that far, type of deal to where Nico Harrison just picked up the phone to call Rob Pelinka to say, what will it take for me to give you Luka Doncic? And as it was, Anthony Davis and Max Christie, and we'll give you a 2029 first-round pick. No, Austin Reeves was not included in that, or anybody else, or another draft pick or whatever, where Mikal Bridges, for the Knicks to get him, they traded 5 first-round draft picks for him. And Mikal Bridges, I'm sorry, is not even in the same stratosphere as Luka Doncic is a basketball player. So, yes, Danielle, I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall during that time to see how that all shook down. And even if you're Adam Silver, and again, he probably shrugged and said, all right, I'll approve the trade, which then harkens back to Pau Gasol in 2008, and even prior to that with the whole Chris Paul being traded from New Orleans to the Lakers. And that was 86 by David Stern. But the Lakers always seem to get their man. And I'll say this before I move it along, because I did actually think about this, considering that the Lakers could still offer Luka, 4 for 229 or whatever it is. And now you can forget about that because of what transpired there Monday night with the Mavs getting the number 1 overall pick. There was a part of me, and I'm saying this now because, again, it's moot, nobody cares, but I'm only bringing this up because I did think about this as early as the Laker exit from the playoffs. Because I believe the next day, Luka was in Dallas driving around his big giant Hummer or whatever it was. I thought to myself, I said, I would not be surprised if Luka Doncic would want to re-sign with the Mavs after being traded, where he'll play out his 1 year, because I believe they can't give him that contract. Maybe they could give it to him this year. If anybody could double check for that, I would appreciate it. But I think with 1 more year left, they could give him the extension, I think as early as this year. And they could play out this year and then maybe get more money next year. But there was a part of me that thought that maybe Luka will go back to the Mavs, there'll be a meeting of the minds between the front office, et cetera, and he go back there based on that regular season game where obviously he was just crying left and right, and rightfully so because the fans adored him, they loved him, and there was no way he wanted to leave Dallas. So there was a part of me that thought maybe he's going to go back to the Mavs. And again, this was after the Lakers were eliminated from the postseason. But that gets 86. That's over and out. So you can forget about that. All right, now let's move on to the Stanley Cup playoffs because this is also a pivotal Game 5 tonight. But this is also turning into a big, giant thud as well. Now, this is the only series that I think could go 7 games because Caps and Jets, that's going to be the next thing I'm going to get to, and the Golden Knights as well. All those 3 teams are down 3-1. This is an enormous game for the Maple Leafs. And you may not be a hockey fan. You may not care. I understand. But the Toronto Maple Leafs are a team that has had I want to say it's probably the longest drought in the NHL right now because the Canadiens, Bruins, Rangers, Blackhawks, Red Wings, those original 6 teams have won, or 5 of those original 6 teams have won, where the Maple Leafs are the 6th. And even in 67, Flyers have won, Kings have won, St. Louis Blues have won. Now, obviously, San Jose, Nashville, Minnesota, those teams haven't won, but obviously they've come long past when the Maple Leafs have been playing. They had a 2-0 series lead. They lost the 2 games in Florida, and now they come back home. And you wonder whether or not Anthony Stolarz, the goaltender of the opening series and had to leave after being elbowed by Sam Bennett in Game 1. And not to put this all on their goaltender, Joseph Wall, but you have to really think deep down inside whether or not the Maple Leafs are going to put Stolarz back in the net if he's healthy, number 1. And number 2, this is a must-win. They lose this game tonight, they're not coming back to Toronto for Game 7. That's not to say they can't win a Game 6. I get that. They probably will. But when you look at how the fortunes of this team has been over the last, not even just 58 years, but just in the last 20 years. Now, they've been able to get out of the first round 2 of the last 3 years, and we know that has always been their big bugaboo, but they haven't been to a conference final since 93 when they lost to the Kings in 7, when the Kings went on to the final and lost to the Canadiens, which ironically is the last time a Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup final. I mean, think about that. So the Maple Leafs must win. And that is a must-watch. I know it's going to be tough because I'm going to watch Knicks Celtics. I'll go back and forth on that as much as I can. But that is one game you have to be at least tuned into tonight, even if you're wrapped up in the basketball or whatever. But that is just a big-time game for the Maple Leafs. They have to win that game. And if they lose that game, they're not going to win the series. And that doesn't mean even if they win, and they win in Florida, they think they can. I don't think they won't. But then you have to play in a pressure cooker in Game 7 over the weekend. And, I don't know if I trust them. You're going up against the defending Cup champ, a team that's battle-tested. They know how to win. They beat you 2 years ago in the conference semis. So why would they be shaking in their boots at any point in the series? Now, the Panthers could lose, of course, but I trust Florida more so than I trust Toronto here. And I'm rooting for Toronto. Nothing against Florida. I just want to see Toronto get to a Cup final and maybe even win. But right now, I guess talk to me at around 10:30 tonight, and I'll give you a better idea as to how I feel about the chances of the Maple Leafs. Although, if they win tonight and have to come back for a Game 7, I still wouldn't feel good. And that's what recent history is showing based on them delivering. Different coach, though. No Sheldon Keefe. My guy, Craig Berube. But that's going to be a game to watch tonight. Val B, I'll get your comment in a second. Let me just wrap up the hockey before I continue. And the next thing, Capitals, Jets, Golden Knights, all face an elimination. And last night, the Jets, they lose 3-1. The hat trick there by, what's the game's name? Not Lindgren. I can't think of these guys' names half the time. The Stars are on the cusp. Oh, and I see interesting. Oh, I want to talk about that. Flyers close to hiring Rick Tocchet as head coach. And Taka was a former Flyer, as you all know. Former tough guy. You know, I love the tough guys, people. That's why Craig Berube. I think that'd be a good hire. Now, he hasn't done much in his coaching career. I know he coached Arizona, he coached Vancouver before he got jettisoned, but he's a homegrown guy, knows the city inside out, upside down, the media, etc. So if that's the case, I like that hire for them. I know he hasn't won. That's the one thing I would be, and not to say you have to bring in a guy that has cup winning experience. That would help, a la Joe Quenneville with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks just recently. But Tocchet, I like that hire. I listen, again, resume not great, but who knows? Maybe he could build it in Philadelphia, a city, an organization, and a fan base that he knows very well. But going back to the, as I pull this up here, going back to the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets. Now, to me, this is more about Winnipeg. The kid's named Michael Granlund had the hat trick there. They win 3-1, the Stars over Winnipeg. Who's under the most pressure? Is it the Capitals down 3-1 against the Carolina Hurricanes, who, as I've said before, and I'll say one more time, they're the Indiana Pacers of hockey, a team that is not sexy, a team that has a bunch of good players, does not have the one great player, and who knows? They may be on the fast track, not only to a conference final, but to a Stanley Cup final. But for the Capitals, 1 seed all year, how many times have I brought this up? How Cleveland and OKC in the NBA, 1 seeds in their respective conferences. How the NHL, Capitals, Jets, 1 seeds in their respective conferences. How they need, all 4 of those teams need to get minimum. I thought Stanley Cup final, but even if they get to a Game 7 of conference final, Cavaliers, Capitals, Jets, this close to being out. And I bring the Golden Knights in there because they're a team that were a 2 seed overall. I get it. They're facing the defending Western Conference champions and the Edmonton Oilers, but they have not played well. And thankfully, for a goal that was 0.4 seconds left on the clock in Game 3, they could probably have been swept in this second round. The team, to me, that's under the most pressure is Winnipeg. Because they were President's Trophy winner, they had the most points, to have a guy in net who's been just god-awful on the road. He's 0-5 in road games, and he's up for not just the Vezina Trophy as best goalie in the sport, but he's also up for MVP. And what has he done so far in this postseason? All right, well, he got through a first round against the St. Louis Blue team that they won in Game 7, and let's face it, he had a very slow start to the game, and they won miraculously. They had to score 2 goals in the final minute and win in overtime. If not, they'd be in Cancun right now. So to me, they're the team that has the most pressure. Capitals are 1A because of the season they had. Nobody expected the Capitals to be a 1 seed. And nobody expected Winnipeg, despite the fact they had a good year last year and they got blasted by Colorado in the opening round. But I don't want to hear it. That is a team, the Capitals too, as a 1A, they need to get to a final. And with the year Alexander Ovechkin had, breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record in the middle of having a broken leg where he missed 18 games in the middle of the season. And he still broke the record and were a top seed in the conference. And now this is how you're about to go out? Now, I don't know if Spencer Carberry's pushed all the right buttons, the head coach. I haven't watched every second of and every minute of this Carolina Washington Capitals series. To me, it's the less intriguing or the least intriguing of all 3, despite the fact that they're a 1 seed. Toronto, Florida, that series speaks for itself. Edmonton, I'm invested because I want to see them go back to a cup final. And Winnipeg is Winnipeg for all the pressure that I talked about. So Carolina, Washington, I followed and tuned in from time to time, but yeah, I'm not riveted or I got to watch this game tonight. Tonight, I'll try to watch a little bit of it because that's going up against the Celtics too. No, as a matter of fact, they're playing tomorrow, aren't they? Yes, because Toronto, yes, they got the extra night based on Toronto and Florida getting the extra night because they played Sunday. So they'll play tomorrow. So obviously I'll have my full attention squared in on that game. But I think the team, Winnipeg, and Golden Knights are 3rd. So Winnipeg 1, Washington 1A, and then 3rd is the Golden Knights. Do they all get out alive and play in a Game 6? I think Dallas will win. Oh, it's funny. Watch them lose because Dallas they can have those hiccups. You know what? I'll say Hellebuck will have one big performance at home. I don't know what their sports talk radio situation is like because he will be lambasted if he loses a game 5 in that bill. I don't care if he loses 2-1 or 1-0. I think Winnipeg will win game 5 and then they'll lose in game 6. Edmonton, now they're going back to Vegas, even though Edmonton won the first 2 games in T-Mobile. I mean, Edmonton has just played so well in this series. I'm going to say Edmonton closed them out. I wouldn't be shocked if the Golden Knights win, but I'll say they close them out. And then the Capitals, they got to show me something here. That's another team that can't go out like that. So I'll say Winnipeg and Washington will go to a game 6, but then lose. And then I'll say that Vegas will lose tonight, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go to a 6 game because they're going to play with a lot of grit and pride and not wanting to go out like that. So that's what I have there with the NHL as far as getting through this round. And I'm sure Gary Bettman would like to have these series go, excuse me, to a 6th, maybe even 7th game. Build up some momentum, some intrigue, because can these series go out in 5 and then it's just Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers as your only series left standing? It's quite possible. We may see that in the NBA after tonight, so we will certainly keep an eye on that. So, yeah, that's your NHL. Let me see what the comments were here. Nope, wrong page. I know Val had a comment that he wanted. It was more NBA related. And I have another comment here, which I'll get to. So, for Val, Kuminga not as good or as Jimmy Butler without Steph Curry. Warriors do not shoot that many threes. I feel bad as fan. Well, Kuminga is a good player. It's just that he is not. I don't know if he's in Steve Kerr's doghouse. And Dead Yell, I'll get you your comment. I don't know if it's that or they just don't have a lot of trust in him. Now, listen, he's put up some numbers, and Butler has regressed since game 3. And I understand there's only been 1 game since before that, since then. But, yeah, I mean, I'd feel bad as a fan as well because losing Steph Curry is like me losing Jayson Tatum. You have very little or no shot winning, let alone a game, but also the series. So I totally get it. Now, let me get to, hold on. Yeah, that's the baseball, which I'll get to. And yeah, I know Dead Yell, you have a comment here. Should Juan Soto exclusive DH Subway Series out for his Yankees game? Interesting question. I will get to that. I'm going to talk about baseball in a moment. And obviously, I'm going to talk about Subway Series. And I also will get you a comment early about Pete Rose. And in fact, let's just get to it right now as I get in the batter's box. So the ban has been lifted, not only for Pete Rose, but also for Shoeless, Joe Jackson. We know the Black Sox scandal, 1919, White Sox Reds, where through games, I believe for like $5,000, whatever it was. And Pete Rose bet on his team to win, not to lose, when he was a manager of the Reds. And we all know that the reason why he should have gotten into the Hall of Fame was because of him as a player. But I get it. The written rule, if you gamble, dating back to the Black Sox scandal, if you gamble, that's it. Lifetime ban of being enshrined in Cooperstown. But now the problem that I have with this is twofold. One has to do with Pete Rose, and another that has to do with another faction of ball players. And this one's twofold. The first problem I have with this is Pete Rose deserved his day. We know Pete Rose now dearly departed. We know that the guy's never been perfect. We know that he has a lot of, you want to say, skeletons in his closet from a personal standpoint. We could talk about that, but that's not neither here nor there. It's about the baseball player. And for Rob Manfred, the commissioner, and I don't know what happened here. I don't know if the current administration had his fingerprints on this because, he came out with a tweet, Pete Rose used to be in the Hall of Fame, blah, blah, blah. It's a disgrace, so on and so forth. And he said that he was going to do whatever it takes to get him in the Hall of Fame. And I'm sure he's probably taking bows right now, which, please, he's got other things to worry about. other than him trying to get Pete Rose, which is going to take all the credit, which is an absolute joke because we know he doesn't deserve any credit of Pete Rose getting into the Hall of Fame. So I'll just keep it there. And yeah, I mean, come on. And listen, real quick, if you think that's an affront to the current president, absolutely not, because that could be Joe Biden, that could have been Barack, that could have been whomever. That right away, if they're going to try to flex or show their influence and be like, oh, well, I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Try to worry about foreign policy, worry about what's going on in this country. You can have a comment about it, but as far as any president trying to use and flex their power to get a player into the Hall of Fame or to have anything that ties into sports when it comes to whatever it may be, nobody wants to hear from me. So before people get up in arms, oh, well, he is anti the current president, he is anti the administration, etc. Nonsense. You could write that however you wish, but I'm telling you right now, okay, and I've said this before in previous live streams, I believe, and it's all about him trying to feel like he has the influence or feel that he has a relevancy to and no, I don't care who you are. So let's not just put that to rest. So that's my first thing. And of course, they're doing this now after he's gone, where he can't have his day in Cooperstown. I understand the family will be there. Maybe the family will speak on his behalf, but that is a joke because we know Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer, and I'll just leave it at that. The second problem I have, and this is even a bigger issue, and this is almost unfathomable. I can't even wrap my head around this. The head of Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame, which I believe is a woman by the name of Janie Clark. And I guess that she has the final say, or maybe has the power and influence as to when Pete Rose will be enshrined. Now, mind you, this is not going to be a part of the baseball writers. This is going to be a committee that's going to be, I guess, handpicked or chosen. I don't know how it's going to work out, which is going to be fascinating. But there's going to be a selection committee as to whom is going to pick or elect Pete Rose to be in the Hall of Fame. But guess when that is going to take place? No, not December of this year. No, not December of next year. December of 2027. Are you serious? Why not put it up to 2030? Let's make it an even number. Let's put it to the year 2030, 5 years from now, to when we could finally put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. And even then, it's not a guarantee, because you may have, whether it's writers, influencers, God forbid, because I don't want any young baseball fans electing anybody that's under 30. They wouldn't know Pete Rose if they fell on him. Let's start there. But even if it is a baseball writer that is chosen on this committee, this better be 12-0. You know, it's going to be one person. There's going to be one fool, one idiot that, let's say, I believe it's supposed to be 12 people on this committee. There's going to be one that's going to not elect them in. All right, fine. And it's probably going to be 75%. So that means they're going to have 8 of the 12. No, that if I do my math, 9 of the 12, do my math correct, that are going to have to qualify Pete Rose and Shoeless, Joe Jackson, et cetera, to be in the Hall of Fame. But we're going to have to wait now 2.5 years for this. I mean, baseball, they screw up a lottery ticket. I mean, this is just a flat out, absolute, and obscene joke. I understand they're not going to do it right away. I understand they're not going to do it in the coming months. And generally, when the Cooperstown, when they start to vote for next year for the class, yeah, have the groundswell in December to where you can start working on the committee now. And I don't know if they're going to revise that, but really 2027 in the final month is when we're going to find out whether or not Pete Rose is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Shame on them. That is just flat out lunacy, comedic, you name it. Please, I can't even stomach that. And listen, I'm not a Pete Rose guy. I was fortunate enough to watch him as a boy, watch him play. And as a Met fan, you can't stand Pete Rose based on the 73 NLCS, the fight with Bud Harrelson. But come on, the guy's a Hall of Famer. So, I mean, it is, you cannot make it up how baseball just screws up a lottery ticket. So, but now here's the other thing I want to get to. Now, this is also to an aside. What does this mean moving forward? You really have to now think long and hard about these steroid guys getting in. Because if you're going to have guys who gambled that had lifetime bans, that means guys that are off the ballot. And off the top of my head, who's the steroid guy that's off the ballot? So I don't know. Does that mean Clemens, Bonds? I think Bonds is off the ballot by now. But those guys are going to have to be considered by whether it's a veterans committee, the collection that they have now that they enshrined, of all people, Harold Baines. I mean, oh, come on. They got that one so wrong. It's not even funny. And I see there's a couple of comments. I'll get to those in a second. But the steroid guys have to get in too now, because there's going to be one guy that's going to break out the pom-poms and say, hey, if Pete Rose was in, he got a lifetime ban, then I should be considered as well. I understand it's a voting process. It's not a thing where we can look at the back of the baseball card, whether you're Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Rafael Palmeiro, Roger Clemens. I go on down the list. Manny Ramirez. But those guys are going to come out and say, hey, I want to get my day. And even if my plaque does say that, yes, he was a steroid user, maybe not in those words, but you get what I'm coming from, then so be it. As long as they're enshrined in Cooperstown, that they will have their name immortalized in that museum in upstate New York, I'm sure they would sign for that. So you're going to have to include those guys. And I've been a guy that didn't want the steroid guys in the room. Now, when you hear their names, you know right away, oh, yeah, they're Hall of Famers. But they cheated the game, cheated the sport. And I understand gambling, they may not cheat the sport unless they're betting against their team, a la Pete Rose, manager. We know that. But you may have to include these guys at some point. And again, with the asterisk, because you cannot put them in the hall without having that mentioned. Because if I bring my grandkids to the Hall of Fame and those aforementioned guys are in there, and they may ask me, hey, granddad, was Mark McGwire an all-time great? Was he really a Hall of Famer? And if he was, why? And I could say why. He was a home run hitter. He broke the single-season record back in 1998, but he did it with performance-enhancing drugs. That's it. And I'm sure it may even say that on the plaque, or however many words they're going to use. So I don't know if that's going to come to pass at some point. How I look at it is that if they're going to let the Pete Rose and the Shoeless Joe Jacksons in, and as it is, you already have racists and murderers and others in the Hall of Fame, then bring in the steroid guys. We know how dominant and how great these guys were. Steroids or no steroids, but I'm sure the steroids added to that if you're Barry Bonds and you want to say David Ortiz. I get it. But if Rose is in, then those guys should be in too. Who am I to say? Yes, I got my biases. I could say, no, keep them out. Not anymore. That's over and done with the situation regarding Pete Rose. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, thanks, Val. I appreciate it. Like this live. I wonder if you jumped off. If you're not, if you're still on, I appreciate you, Val. You know that. And then Dead Yell, Bonds, McGwire, Palmeiro, Clement. Yeah, Sosa. I forgot about Sammy Sosa. Good one there. Dead Yell, 100%. All right, now let's get to it. I got a couple other things before we bid adieu, and this is the first one. Now, I plan to be outside of Yankee Stadium on Friday to take the temperature of the Yankee fan, and I can pretty much tell you how that's going to go. But I still got to do it anyway, because there have been Yankee fans to this very second that are still trolling Juan Soto now that he's in Flushing for the next 15 years. And I got to find out. There may be some that, I'm over it. There may be some that, I'm going into the game tonight. I'm going to boo the hell out of him. And there may be some that's like, I'm going to not only boo him so bad, but I'm also going to whatever. Yankee Stadium, you know the reputation they have, throwing whiskey bottles and batteries and things of that nature. Now, I'm not condoning that by any stretch. So hopefully they're pretty tame. But like Dead Yell said earlier, and let me pull that up real quick. His comment Oh, yeah, I'm going to get to your comment there, Bio, I promise. Where is it here? Dead Yell? No. Yes, here we go. Should Juan Soto exclusively DH the Subway Series at Southwest Yankee Stadium? No, I think you should play the outfield because that's only going to add more fuel to the fire with chance and things of that nature. Let him play right field. If somebody wants to act a fool, I'm sure there's going to be, you would hope, extra security out there for any fan that's going to throw stuff or act stupid or even curse at him, his family, whatever. So let him play right field. If he DHs one game, all right, I could dig that. But have him play the outfield. And it's going to be interesting because, the press is going to ask the manager, Carlos Mendoza, whether or not he's going to be in the lineup as a right fielder. And I'm sure Mendoza is going to answer it accordingly. And whether that means he plays or pitches, you hear me? Whether he plays in the field or if he DHs. Let me get my words straight. So all I got to say is this. The Yankee fan sour. There are a bunch of troll artists out there. You can boo all you want. I hope they keep it respectful. And this is a series that, for the first time in a long time, and I know the Mets were in first place in 2022, but that Subway Series, and a lot of people don't remember these Subway Series, but for May 16th, 17th, 18th, you have two teams that are going to be in first place, or at least so you think. Now, I would think because the Mets still have, even if they lose today, and they won the first two games. And right now it's looking clear. Let me see what the weather's going to be because it was supposed to rain all day, and I don't think it's rained since this morning. It says steady rain. Actually raining right now. 63 degrees. Boy, can we be in the 70s at least? But you're going to have these two teams going at it. And I hope Soto mashes 5 homers to that short porch, has a monster series. Now, all I'll say is that I've always come into the series saying as long as the Mets are respectable, don't get swept, don't get embarrassed, which is what the Mets did to the Yankees last year. So I don't know if the Yankees have long memories and will look at this series and be like, oh, yeah, I remember what they did to us last year. And the Yankees are playing well. I know they lost last night 2-1 in Seattle, but they've been mashing the ball, crushing it. Aaron Judge is batting .410. And listen, they are clicking big time. And the pitching matchups, I'll talk more about this on the podcast tomorrow, so you got to tune into that. Apple, Spotify, jreels.com, of course, on YouTube at jreels. But I think it's going to be an exciting series. It's going to be electric. It's going to have that playoff atmosphere. I just hope the fans are tame. Who knows? With the Yankee fan throwing stuff and yelling all types of nonsense, the Met fan steps in. Is there going to be a Royal Rumble in the stands? Who knows? But I will, weather permitting, get out there to see what the Yankee fan is thinking, feeling. I'll talk to Met fans as well, as that'll be my next vlog forthcoming, as I did one with the Knicks against the Pistons in the first round. If they're able to have any luck against the Celtics, and here they are one game away, as we know. So, yeah, maybe having that video was an omen as a sign for Celtic fans of bad things to come. And maybe I shouldn't go out there to film the Mets because watch them get swept by the Yankees in an embarrassing fashion, which I'd be sick to my stomach. All right, now, Yankee fans are the worst. You don't have to tell me that, Bio, without question. And then Dead Yell, what do you have here? Trent Grisham's back. Yeah, I know. Trent Grisham is now all of a sudden Reggie Jackson. I mean, the guy, he's hitting home runs left and right. He got robbed of a home run there, I believe, in Oakland on Sunday or at Sacramento. So, yeah, I mean, he has been a big surprise considering last year was a lost season for the outfielder. So, yeah, and that's what I mean. Yankee fans, they're just going to be bitter until the end, and I don't know what more else to say about that, but you have that scenario regarding the Subway Series, which I'm looking forward to. First visit since the blockbuster deal. And then lastly, and I got to clap at the NFL, and this will be my last topic before I bid adieu. And not only that, we may have another blackout here. No, I got 17% on the laptop. Remember last week I had to take the laptop I had to power up the laptop and take off the ring light. The NFL schedule releases tonight, but you wouldn't know that based on, and we know this happens every year, I get it, but we wouldn't know that based on the leakage that has transpired over the last 2 days with the NFL. And I got to say this, and if you've listened to me over the years on the podcast or have watched any of my vlogs, especially when I destroyed the NFL, and I'm one of the very few, and Lord knows, I go back to the 70s watching the NFL. NFL review and preview, Inside the NFL on HBO with Nick Monicani and Len Dawson. All the NFL films, NFL Game of the Week that was on Channel 5 on Saturdays. I used to look forward to that with the NFL review and preview. If you know, you know. But I'm tired of the NFL and their antics. And for those who are going to say, well, Jay Reels, they don't watch the NFL anymore. I've been watching the sports since the 70s. I haven't yet divorced myself. And who knows, there may be a day I will divorce myself from the NFL. But I'm tired of them. And I get it. We live in a world where content is king. And if your content is the NFL, where you absolutely positively have to watch every Sunday, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I mean, enough. Did you see some of the games that have been leaked out? The Kansas City Chiefs have the holidays on lock. They're playing Christmas night against Denver. They're playing on Thanksgiving against the against the Cowboys. I am chiefed out. Everybody has Chief fatigue. 3 straight Super Bowls. They won 2 of the previous 3. Lose to the Eagles. I get it. It's Patrick Mahomes. I get it. They're a lightning rod. And what makes it worse, and I think the reason why that the Chiefs are on more often than not only because of the quarterback and of their success, but guess who? None other than Taylor Swift. Because you have Travis Kelce there. And if Taylor Swift's going to be at the games, that means more eyeballs to the sets, as if nobody watches the NFL. But I've had enough. I just can't stand it. I cannot. It's almost as if the NFL, they're trying to look for more fans. But they have more fans. They just literally annihilate the other sports. As evidenced by Christmas Day. And they're going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 games on Christmas Day. You're going to have the 2 on Netflix and 1 on Amazon Prime, which I believe that's where the Chief Bronco game is going to be on. And then on top of that, you have December 20th, which I believe is the opening round of the college football. They'll have the game Friday night and then have the 3 games on Saturday. They don't care. College football, yeah. College football playoff, that's all right. We'll have our 2 games, which I believe is Commanders, Eagles, and the second game, I don't remember what it was. Colts, somebody? I forgot. And then I read this too, which to me, I'll believe it when I see it, but it's the NFL, so I can't put it past them. I believe they're having 2 games, one at 1 o'clock and one at 4:30. Wednesday afternoon, December 17th. Why, may I ask? Because remember, last year, the NFL and Netflix had the Christmas Day games where they were on a Wednesday. And for the first time, you had NFL on a Wednesday, which was just, well, that's a lie, because I remember during the pandemic, you did have Steelers-Ravens on a Wednesday, but of course, they had to postpone that game a million times, so therefore it was on a Wednesday. But you never had 2 games or 1 game that was scheduled prior to the beginning of the season on a Wednesday up until last year. So now all of a sudden, Wednesday is going to be a hallmark NFL day before Christmas, where people are going to be at work, and it's not a holiday. It was there like a national Christmas tree day, or is December 17th I don't know what it is, but this is what I mean about the NFL. They cannot help themselves. They just have to jam these games down your throat. They have to just throw the impenetrable NFL shield right in front of your face. It is just mind-numbing. It is exhausting. And people will say, well, Jay Reels, you don't have to watch. That's not the point. The point is that they put these games on anyway. There is no, I don't want to go as far as saying likability. The NFL, as we once knew it, is gone forever. Everybody look forward to Sunday at 1. Everybody look forward to the full slate of games. All right, in the Sunday night game, you have a Monday night game, all right, fine. Then you have a Thursday night game. And the Thursday night is a bit of a stretch because those Thursday night games aren't great. Now, the matchups may be great, or they try to give you that marquee matchup, usually that interdivision matchup where you know it's going to be contested, you know it's going to be tooth and nail, etc. But those games aren't memorable, to say the least. And for the NFL to put forth this product where they're trying to have player safety, and they're going to go to 18 games at some point, as you know, in the next few years. And What made the NFL special was because it was just the one day. And I get it, it's 2025. Get with the program, Jay Reels. This isn't 1970s when you watch football back then. And I'm not trying to say they got to go back to the 70s. But when you have a game on a Wednesday or two games on December 17th, some random day where you have NFL games, I'm sorry. That's when the line has to get drawn. Because it's not special anymore. And I understand they had their games on Saturday once the college football season is over, even dating back to the days of the 70s. And to now interfere with the NBA on Christmas Day and to have it now interfere with the college football playoff. And now that they have the special Wednesday game, they already have a Black Friday game. They already have Christmas games, as we know, and that's going to go on to eternity. And now that it's on a Thursday night, the Black Friday, now you're going to have a Christmas Friday, you're going to have Saturday, you're going to have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It is just going to be, one more time, spoon-fed and jammed down your throat. And you know what? I'm not here for it. I could care less. I don't know more else to say. And nobody's actually made a comment about that, which I'm surprised. I figured that people would be like, oh, Jay Reels, come on, it's NFL. We know that right now, the NFL, it's all about the fantasy football, which I get by the end of the year is over because it's not as if they had the fantasy football going through week 18. But I just had enough. With just everything at this league and what they've done, and they've just ruined the product. And that's, to me, as I'll cap it off right here, not only did I mention that it's not special anymore, but the one thing is become so watered down. It has become a thing where you just can't look at the calendar and be, oh, yeah, these are the games that are on Saturday, or this is the Sunday night game, or this is the Monday night game. Now you have to think about it's a Tuesday. Wait, is there a Wednesday game this week? Oh, wait, there's a Thursday night game. All right, they're fine. But wait, Black Friday. Who's playing on Black Friday? And Black Friday, that matchup isn't really anything to write home about. Bears, Eagles? Listen, I understand the Bears are probably going to be better, but yeah. And I get it. They're not going to give you a 5-star matchup. But this is the problem. This is where the games get spread thin. This is where all the flexing and all of the pomp and circumstance of the schedule just gets lost. Because when you have so many mouths to feed in reference to the streaming services, the networks, channels, et cetera, that are all a part of this, you got to give them quality games. And guess what? At the end of the day, they're not quality anymore because they're playing on short rest. They're playing in short weeks. They're playing on a Saturday because they got to play on a Wednesday. Or, oh, they got a Wednesday game, or now we got to make sure that they get to play at least maybe the following Thursday. These games are all over the map. And therefore, I can't stand it. And I may be in the minority, and I've said this a million times over, but the NFL, they could stick it if you ask me. And I'll talk about some of the schedule tomorrow on the podcast. I won't go through every game and every nook and cranny. And listen, and one last thing. Can I just close it on this note? This is the best example to explain why that this is just an out-and-out fallacy, or did I say that right? A farce. Fallacy may be the right word. This just goes to show you how scrambled my brain is when it comes to this. I will close on this. The Minnesota Vikings, to my guy, Kev the Viking fan and head style in Minneapolis, who is from that city, big-time Viking fans. How do you feel that on October 29th, no, I take that back, on September 28th and October 5th, you're going to have to wake up at 8:30 in the morning, your time, to watch back-to-back weeks the Vikings play in Dublin against the Steelers and play in London against the Cleveland Browns. So think about this. When you thought that maybe, just maybe, oh, wow, Minnesota's going to play in Pittsburgh this year because those games are on the road because the AFC has the extra game this year. So maybe you thought, oh, wow, that'd be a cool trip to make. Or even as a Steelers fan that I am, let's say if I want to go with Kev the Viking fan, hey, let's go to Pittsburgh to see the Steelers and Vikings. No, you're not going to be able to do that because now you could do it, but you have to go to Dublin to watch that game. And then Minnesota to Cleveland, which is closer to going to Pittsburgh, where, hey, that's a quick trip. Early October, it's not going to be cold. Why not? Let's do that. No, well, now you're going to reroute that trip from Minneapolis to Cleveland to go to London as they're going to play in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. This is the NFL over the last few years, and even more so in 2025, where the Vikings are going to play 2 road games, back-to-back weeks in Dublin, Ireland, and in London, England. The NFL has presented to you in 2025. It is a joke. Need I say more? Any last thoughts from my guys and gals in the chat room? If not, that'll do it. Another episode just about in the books. As always, please subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that good stuff. And as you see, it scrolled on the bottom. The next podcast coming at you tomorrow. As I implore each and every one of you, if you haven't done so, again, I'm an independent podcaster, content creator, doing this for the love. I do not have a job. This is my job now. And I haven't been able to generate a ton of income. Not even just a ton. I haven't been able to generate. And I understand I'm a one-man band, one-man operations. People saying, Jay Reels, 15 months out of work. You must have money coming out of your ears. No, that's not the case. But I planned for this. But at the same time, now I got to start generating some income. And even though I got a couple of sponsors from Olipop Soda, 15% off. You go to drinkolipop.com using the promo code JReels or betterhelp.com/JReels for those that, hey, going through a tough time, need a voice, need to find somebody. You could get one within 48 hours, a therapist, and you get 10% off your first month. So I got to just plug that in there real quick. But although I got a couple of sponsors, but that's not steadily paying the bills on the regular. So one more time, if you haven't subscribed, or if you know of a sports fan, good, casual, great sports fan, diehard, kook like yours truly, send it to them. Take a screenshot. Send it to them. Also tag me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the J Reels Podcast, or on Instagram at J Reels, Twitter, JReels1, just a number. And if you want to hit me up with a question, comment, suggestion, the old-fashioned way to jreelspodcast@gmail.com, or just follow up here like I mentioned at the top. Leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to respond. Because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. If you couldn't tell by the last hour and 37 minutes, the passion, fire, energy, and fury coming out of my mouth into this microphone through your earbuds, headphones, speakers, laptop, TV, whatever, then you're going to have to come back next Wednesday, or you're going to have to listen to the podcast tomorrow. Because as long as I'm alive and breathing, the dream is still going. The little engine that could is still going until I become a household name. And not to try to make it about me, but it's a thing where the work speaks for itself. 2 podcasts a week, a live stream, on location videos with fans, interviews, critique videos, which I'm in the midst of editing one right now, which I hope to have by Friday. But keep your eyes and ears peeled on the YouTube channel at JReels and any of my social media accounts. Because, again, as long as I'm alive and breathing, I am not stopping. So you got me, people. I'm here. I'm present. I'm with you. You're with me. I appreciate you all because you know I'm going to unpack anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the J Reels live stream and podcast, but in this particular case, the live stream will always come live, correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Center, the South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next Wednesday here on the live stream, on the flip, baby.